I was 26 years old when I decided to hike a section of the Appalachian Trail in North Carolina. This was about 7 years ago, back when I was still naive enough to think that solo hiking as a woman was perfectly safe as long as you stayed on the marked trails. I'd been on the trail for 3 days and, honestly, it had been incredible. The fall foliage was at its peak, burnt oranges and deep reds stretching as far as I could see. I'd pass other hikers every few hours, exchange pleasantries, maybe share trail mix at a shelter. It felt like a community out there, you know, everyone looking out for each other. But on the 4th day, something changed. I woke up at sunrise at a shelter called Cold Spring. There were 2 other people there, a couple in their 50s who were already packed up and left by the time I rolled up my sleeping bag. I made instant coffee on my camp stove, checked my map, and started hiking north around 7 AM. The morning was perfect, crisp air, birds singing, that smell of pine and damp earth. I was making good time, feeling strong. Around 10 AM, I stopped at a clearing to refill my water from a stream using my filter, and that's when I first saw him. He was maybe 50 yards back on the trail, just standing there. Tall guy, maybe 6'2", wearing a dark green jacket and a baseball cap pulled low. He had a backpack, so I figured he was just another hiker. But something about the way he stood there, completely still, watching me, it made my hair on the back of my neck stand up. I waved. He didn't wave back. I told myself I was being paranoid. I finished filtering my water, packed up and just kept moving. But about 20 minutes later, I glanced back, and there he was again. Same distance, same posture, just following. Now, here's the thing about the Appalachian Trail. Hikers move at different paces. It's completely normal for someone to be behind you for miles. Faster hikers pass you, slower hikers fall back. But this guy, he was maintaining the exact same distance, never getting closer, never falling back. I tried to shake him. I picked up my pace, pushed myself into a near jog on the flatter sections. My lungs burned, my pack dug into my shoulders. I'd check back every few minutes, and every single time, there he was, 50 yards back, like clockwork. By noon, I was actually frightened. I stopped at a trail intersection where there was a privy, an outhouse basically. I went inside, locked the door, and I just stood there, trying to catch my breath and just figure out what to do. My hands were shaking. I waited in that privy for about 15 minutes. Surely, I thought, he'll pass by. He'll keep going, and I know it was all in my head. I cracked open the door and I peeked out. He was standing at the edge of the clearing, not moving, just staring at the privy, waiting for me to come out. And that's when I knew this wasn't a coincidence. This was actually another hiker keeping a similar pace. This was deliberate. I pulled out my phone. No signal, of course. I was at least 8 miles from the nearest road. The next shelter was 4 miles north, but I had no idea if anyone would be there. My pepper spray was buried somewhere in the bottom of my pack. I stayed in that outhouse for another 10 minutes, trying to formulate a plan. Finally, I heard voices, male voices. Thank God. I opened the door and I saw 2 guys in their 20s approaching from the south. The man in the green jacket had moved off the trail, pretending to adjust his pack. I practically ran to those 2 hikers. I must have looked insane. I told them everything, the following, the waiting, the not speaking. They looked at each other, then back at the guy in green, who was now walking north on the trail ahead of us. "Stay with us," one of them said. "We're going to the Tri-Corner Knob shelter. We'll make sure you're okay." We hiked together for the next 4 hours. The guy in the green jacket stayed ahead of us, maybe 100 yards. But every time we came around the bend, our see him, stopped on the trail, looking back, waiting to see if I was still there, if I was still with people. We got to the shelter around 4 p.m. There were already 6 other hikers there, setting up for the night. Safety in numbers. I never felt so relieved in my entire life. The guy in the green jacket showed up 20 minutes later. He didn't stay at the shelter. He stood at the edge of the clearing, stared directly at me for a solid 30 seconds, then turned and walked back south, back the way we'd come. One of the guys I hiked with said, "That's not normal, right? People don't hike backwards." No, they don't. I ended up hiking out with a group of 4 people the next day. We made it to a road crossing and I hitched a ride into town. I called the Trail Conservancy and I reported everything, gave them a description. They said they've had 2 other reports in the past month, women hiking alone, followed by a man matching that description. He never approached, never spoke, just followed. I never went back to finish that section. To this day, I don't hike alone, and every time I see someone standing on the trail, just watching, my stomach drops. Some people don't belong in the woods, and some of them, they know exactly what they're doing out there. This happened when I was 19, almost 20 years ago now. My buddy Jake and I were hiking a section of the AT through Virginia in early October. We were young, stupid, and way too confident in our abilities. We packed light, too light, and our plan was to camp at designated shelters each night. On day 3, we screwed up. We misread the map and took a side trail that we thought was a shortcut. It wasn't. By the time we realised our mistake, it was almost dark, and we were miles off the main trail, deep in a section of the woods that felt wrong. There were no birds, no insects, just this heavy, oppressive silence that made you want to whisper even though there was no reason to. The trees were packed close together, and the underbrush was thick with thorns and dead vines. We were bushwhacking at that point, trying to get back to the AT before we lost the light completely. That's when Jake spotted the cabin. It was small, maybe 12 by 12 feet, made of dark, weathered wood. No windows, just a door, slightly ajar, hanging crooked on rusted hinges. There was no path leading to it, no signs of recent human activity. It looked like it'd been there for decades, just rotting into the forest floor. "Should we check it out?" Jake asked. I didn't want to. Every instinct in my body was screaming to keep moving, but it was getting darker by the minute, and we were lost. If we could spend the night inside, even in a creepy old cabin, it would be better than trying to set up camp in the pitch black. "Yeah," I said, "let's take a look." We approached slowly. The door creaked when Jake pushed it open. Inside, it was dark, almost too dark to see, but as our eyes adjusted, we could make out a dirt floor, wooden walls, and a single piece of furniture, a chair, facing the door, and someone was sitting in it. I swear to God, my heart stopped. Jake stumbled backwards, nearly knocking me over, but then we realised it wasn't a person. It was a mannequin, or a scarecrow, something human-shaped, dressed in old, rotting clothes, slumped in a chair with its head tilted to one side. "What the hell?" Jake breathed. We stood there for a minute, just staring. Then Jake laughed, this nervous, too loud laugh, and said, "Some hunter's idea of a joke. Some hunter's idea of a joke, probably. Come on, let's see if we can stay here." We went inside. The air smelled like mildew and something sweet and rotten, like fruit left out too long. The mannequin was even creepier up close. It had no face, just a burlap sack pulled over its head, tied at the neck with twine. Its hands were made of sticks, lashed together with wire. Jake moved it outside, propped it against a tree. "There," he said, "problem solved." We set up our sleeping bags on the dirt floor, ate a cold dinner of granola bars and jerky, and tried to settle in. We didn't have a fire, too risky inside a wooden structure, so we used our headlamps. The darkness outside the door was absolute. No moon, no stars, just black. I don't know what time it was when I woke up, but it was still full dark. I could hear Jake breathing beside me, fast asleep, and then I heard something else. Footsteps. Not animal footsteps, human footsteps, slow, deliberate, crunching through the leaves outside the cabin. I sat up, fumbling for my headlamp. My hands were shaking so badly I almost couldn't turn it on. When I did, I pointed it at the door. The mannequin was back. It was sitting in the chair again, facing us, exactly as we found it. I grabbed Jake's shoulder, shaking him awake. "Jake, Jake, wake up!" He jolted upright, confused. Then he saw it. "What the? I moved that thing outside. I know I did." "I know," I whispered. We both stared at it. Neither of us moved. And then, I swear on everything I love, the head tilted. Just slightly, like it was looking at us. "Get your stuff," Jake said. "We're leaving, now." We didn't pack carefully. We shoved everything into our bags, grabbed our trekking poles and bolted out that cabin. I've never moved so fast in my life. We crashed through the underbrush, tripping over roots, branches whipping our faces. I didn't look back. I couldn't. We hiked through the night, God knows how, and by some miracle, we stumbled back onto the AT just as the sun was coming up. We didn't stop until we reached the next shelter, where we collapsed, exhausted and terrified. A week later, after we finished our hike, I tried to find that cabin on a map. I looked at topographical maps, satellite images, everything. There was no structure marked in that area, no old homesteads, no hunting cabins, nothing. Jake and I don't talk about it anymore, but I know he remembers, and I know he still wonders the same thing I do. Who put that mannequin back in the chair, and what would have happened if we stayed until morning? My dad told me this story and it still haunts me. He thru-hiked the entire Appalachian Trail back in 1987, all 2,200 miles. It took him 6 months. He met a lot of people along the way, trail names mostly. Hikers don't use their real names out there. He was Trail Mix, his buddy was Boots, you get the idea. Around mile 1,400 somewhere in New Hampshire. My dad and 3 other hikers, Boots, a woman named Songbird, and a guy named Keychain, were all camped at Garfield Ridge Shelter. It was early evening, just after dinner. They were all sitting around, sharing stories, when another hiker showed up. His name was Sam, not a trail name, just Sam. He was quiet, polite, probably in his mid-30s. He had all the right gear, said he started his through hike back in Georgia just like the rest of them. He set up his sleeping bag in the shelter, shared some of his freeze-dried chili, and mostly just listened while the others talked. My dad said there was nothing unusual about him, nothing memorable, just another hiker. They all went to sleep around 9 p.m. My dad woke up a few hours later. He had to piss, and he noticed Sam's sleeping bag was empty. Figured he'd just gone to the privy and was just getting water. Didn't think much of it. In the morning, Sam was gone. Sleeping bag, pack, everything. Like he was never there. "Guess he wanted an early start," Boots said. They packed up and just kept hiking. Over the next week, they'll meet other hikers at shelters and trail crossings, and my dad would ask, "Hey, "Have you seen a guy named Sam? Quiet guy, brown pack, started in Georgia." No one had seen him. No one had heard of him. 2 weeks later, they stopped at a hostel near the trail. The owner kept a logbook where hikers would sign in, leave messages, check who'd passed through. My dad flipped it open, looking for familiar trail names. He found an entry from 3 weeks earlier, right around the time they met Sam. It read, "If you see a guy named Sam, average height, brown pack, don't camp with him, don't talk to him, just keep moving, he's not real. Signed, Falcon." My dad's hands went cold. He showed it to Boots and Songbird. They all remembered Sam. They all remembered talking to him, sharing food with him. He'd been there. They found Falcon 2 days later, camped at Mispa Spring Hut. He was a through hiker in his 50s, weathered and serious. "You saw him?" Falcon said when my dad asked. It wasn't a question. "Yeah," my dad said, "at Garfield Ridge. Why? Who is he?" Falcon shook his head. I don't know, man, but I saw him 3 times on my hike, always at shelters, always quiet, and every time, the next day, he's just gone. No footprints leading away, no trace. I've asked other hikers, and some of them have seen him too. Always the same. Sam, brown pack, started in Georgia." "That doesn't make sense," Boots said. "No," Falcon agreed, "it doesn't. But here's the thing. Everyone who sees him finishes their through hike. No injuries, no quitting. It's like he's, I don't know, watching over people." My dad didn't know what to make of that. He finished his through hike 2 months later, made it all the way back to Catadina, Maine, and he never saw Sam again. But about 10 years ago, I hiked a section of the AT with my dad in Pennsylvania. We stayed at a shelter called Quarry Gap. In the logbook, someone had written, "Sam was here, quiet guy, good vibes, anyone else meet him? Signed, Wanderer." My dad just closed the book, looked at me and said, "Let's keep moving." I don't know who Sam is, or was, or if he even exists, but my dad swears he was real. He remembers his voice, remembers sharing that chili, remembers him sitting there in the shelter, smiling, listening to their stories. And somewhere out there, on the Appalachian Trail, maybe he still is. I worked as a park ranger for 3 years in the section of the AT that runs through the Great Smoky Mountains. Part of my job was to hike the trail, check on shelters, make sure hikers were following leave no trace principles, that sort of thing. I loved it. Most of the time it was peaceful, just me, the mountains, and the occasional curious black bear. But there was one stretch of the trail between Stiller's Bold and Double Spring Gap that always made me uneasy. I can't explain why. It wasn't particularly remote or dangerous, it was just off. The trees there grew differently, twisted, leaning inwards over the trail like they were trying to close it off. And it was always cold, even in the middle of summer. This happened in late September, about 4 years ago. I was doing a routine patrol, hiking north. It was a weekday, so the trail was quiet. I hadn't seen another soul in hours. Around 3 PM, I stopped to rest on a fallen log and eat a protein bar, and that's when I heard it. A voice, a woman's voice, calling out from somewhere off the trail. "Help me!" It was faint, but clear. My training kicked in immediately. Someone was injured, lost. I dropped my pack, grabbed my radio and my first aid kit, and started moving towards the voice. "Where are you?" I shouted. "Keep talking, I'm coming." "Help me," she called again, closer now. maybe 30 yards to the east, down a steep slope. I pushed through the undergrowth, sliding on loose rocks, branches scratching my arms. I'm almost there. Keep calling. Help me. I burst into a small clearing, breathing hard, scanning for the woman. There was no one there. I stood still, listening. The forest was quiet. No birds, no wind, nothing. Hello? I called. Where are you? And then, from behind me, back towards the trail. Help me. My blood ran cold. I spun around, heart pounding. The voice was coming from the direction I'd just come from, but that didn't make sense. I'd been moving towards it. Hello? I called out, my voice shakier now. This is Park Ranger Ellis. If you need help, please respond. Nothing. I waited for 5 minutes, maybe 10, just listening. Finally, I radioed dispatch, reported a possible lost hiker. They told me to mark the area and continue my patrol, and they'll send another ranger to sweep the section. I hiked out, faster than I should have. And the whole way, even 100 yards or so, I'd hear it again. Help me! Always behind me, always the same distance away. I made it back to my truck just before dark. I sat in the driver's seat, hands gripping the steering wheel, trying to calm down. I told myself it was an echo, a trick of the mountains, some acoustic anomaly. But I've worked in those mountains for years. I know what an echo sounds like, and this wasn't an echo. The other ranger swept the area the next day. He didn't find anyone. No footprints, no gear, no signs of distress, nothing. I asked some of the old timers at the radio station if they've ever heard anything like that on the trail. One of them, a guy named Earl who'd been working the park for 30 years, just looked at me and said, "You heard a woman?" "What woman?" I asked. "Lots of rangers hear her," he said. "Been happening for decades. No one knows who she is, or was. Just don't follow the voice and don't answer it." I answered it, I said. He didn't say anything for a long time. Then, "Well, guess we'll see." I don't work that section anymore. I requested a transfer and they granted it. But sometimes, late at night when I'm lying in bed, I swear I can still hear it. Faint, like it's coming from another room. "Help me." I never answer. I never will. I was on day 47 of my through hike when I reached Wapiti shelter in Southern Virginia. It was late afternoon and I'd pushed hard to make the 15.3 miles from the last shelter. My trail name was Lone Wolf, which was funny because I actually preferred hiking alone. The solitude was the whole point for me. The shelter was empty when I arrived, which was perfect. I set up my sleeping pad on the wooden platform, hung my food bag from the bare cables, and was filtering water from the nearby stream when I heard footsteps on the approach trail. A man emerged from the woods carrying a white plastic grocery bag. Not a backpack, not a day pack, a grocery bag from what looked like a dollar store. Handles stretched thin from whatever weight was inside. He was maybe 50, wearing jeans and a flannel shirt that looked too clean for the trail. His boots were wrong too, old work boots, not hiking boots. But it was his face that made me uneasy. He wasn't smiling or acknowledging me, just staring with this flat, blank expression. "Evening," I said, trying to sound friendly. He nodded once but didn't speak, sat the grocery bag down carefully on the shelter platform about 10 feet from my spot. The bag crinkled, and I caught a glimpse inside, what looked like rope and a dark bundle of fabric. I went back to filtering water, trying to ignore the prickling sensation on the back of my neck. When I glanced up, he was sitting on the platform edge, perfectly still, watching me, not looking around at the shelter, not getting his gear organised, not doing any of the normal things hikers do, just watching. "You through hiking?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Just visiting," he said. His voice was flat and motionless. I finished filtering my water and climbed onto the platform to make dinner. The shelter had the usual graffiti, mouse droppings, and a trail register hanging from a nail. I flipped through it while my ramen rehydrated, reading entries from other hikers who passed through. That's when I saw it, an entry from 3 days earlier. Warning: if you see a man with a grocery bag at this shelter, do not stay here. Leave immediately. He's been following hikers. Signed, Compass. My stomach dropped. I looked up. The man was still sitting there, motionless, that grocery bag beside him. He hadn't eaten anything, hadn't set up any kind of sleeping arrangement, just sat there as the sun went down, watching. I ate my ramen slowly, mind racing. The next shelter was 2.3 miles north. I could hike out, but it would be dark in 30 minutes. Night hiking was dangerous. I could twist an ankle, miss a turn. But staying here with this guy felt worse. I decided to wait it out, act normal. My bear spray was in the side pocket of my pack, within easy reach. "You staying here tonight?" I asked him, trying to sound casual. He turned his head slowly to look at me. "Maybe." As darkness fell, I lay in my sleeping bag with my headlamp on, pretending to read my Kindle. The man remained sitting on the edge of the platform. Hours passed. He didn't move, didn't lie down, didn't sleep. The grocery bag sat next to him, and occasionally I see him reach down and touch it, like he was making sure it was still there. Around 11, I heard him stand up. My hand went to the bear spray. He walked to the edge of the platform, stepped down, and disappeared into the darkness beyond my headlamp's reach. I sat up, heart hammering. I could hear footsteps circling the shelter, slow, deliberate. He was walking around the outside perimeter. Then the footsteps stopped, silent. I strained to hear anything. 5 minutes passed, 10. Then I heard it, breathing, close by. He was standing just outside the shelter, in the darkness, breathing. I grabbed my bear spray and pointed it towards the sound. "I can hear you out there." The breathing stopped. Footsteps retreated into the woods. I didn't sleep. Sat with my back against the shelter wall, bear spray in hand, waiting for dawn. At first light, around 5:30, I packed up as quickly and quietly as possible. The man was gone. The grocery bag was gone too. I hiked the 2.3 miles to the next shelter in record time, not stopping once. When I arrived, I found 2 other hikers making breakfast, a couple in their 30s who called themselves Trail Mix and Blaze. "You look like you've seen a ghost," Trail Mix said. I told them about the man with the grocery bag. Their faces went pale. "We saw him too," Blaze said, 2 days ago, at the shelter before Wapiti. He showed up at dusk, didn't say much, just watched us. We hiked out at night because he was creeping us out so bad." We reported it to the ranger at the next road crossing. He pulled out a notebook and started writing down details. "This is the 4th report we've gotten about someone matching that description in the area," he said. "Always the same pattern. Middle-aged guy, grocery bag, shows up at shelters at dusk, watches hikers, doesn't sleep." "Is it the same guy?" I asked. The ranger hesitated. "Here's the thing that bothers me. In 1981, there were 2 murders at Wapiti shelter. A man named Randall Lee Smith shot 2 hikers there. He went to prison, got out in the 90s. In 2008, he attacked 2 more hikers about 30 miles from here. Died in jail in 2008. "Okay," I said, not following. The reports we're getting now describe someone who looks a lot like Smith did in the 80s. But he'd be in his 70s now if he were alive. The man you're describing sounds younger, maybe 50. I felt cold. What was in Smith's bag when they arrested him in 2008? The ranger looked at me. Rope and duct tape. I never saw the man again, but 2 weeks later, I met another hiker who stayed at Wapiti's shelter. She told me she'd seen him too. Same grocery bag, same flat stare. She'd left that night and reported it to rangers. They still haven't caught him. Last I heard, there'd been 6 more sightings. I finished my through hike, all 2,193 miles. But I never stayed at Wapiti's shelter again. And when I pass through Virginia now, I still check that trail register, looking for warnings about a man with a grocery bag who watches hikers while they sleep. I was on day 32 of my through hike when we hit the fog in Massachusetts. Our group, me, Katie and Josh, we had been hiking together for about a week. We weren't officially a trail melee or anything, just 3 people who happened to be going the same pace and enjoyed each other's company. The morning started clear. We left the shelter around 7 AM, planning to make 14 miles to the next road crossing. The morning started clear. We left the shelter around 7 AM, planning to make 14 miles to the next road crossing. By 9 AM, the fog rolled in. I've hiked in fog before, but this was different. Thick, grey, the kind that cuts visibility to maybe 20 feet. The trees disappeared. The trail markers, those white blazes painted on rocks and trees, they became harder to spot. "Stay close," Katie said from the front. She was our unofficial navigator, always checking the GPS, always counting blazes. I was in the middle, Josh was in the rear. We hiked like that for an hour, moving slower than usual, calling out when we spotted a white blaze. The fog seemed to swallow our voices. Everything felt muted, distant, and that's when we heard it. "Help! Someone help!" A man's voice, distant, somewhere off to our left. Maybe 100 yards away. We stopped. Katie turned around. "Did you hear that?" "Help! I'm lost. Can anyone hear me?" The voice sounded desperate, frightened, like someone was in real trouble. "We should check it out," Josh said. Katie pulled out her GPS. "We're on the trail. It's definitely off trail, but I can't tell how far." "Help, please." The voice was closer now, maybe 50 yards. "Hello?" I shouted back. "Keep calling out. We'll find you." "I can't see anything. It's too foggy." We stepped off the trail, moving carefully through the underbush. Katie held up her hand every few seconds, making sure Josh and I were still behind her. The fog was so thick I could barely see her, and she was only 10 feet ahead. "Keep talking," Katie called out. "We're coming towards you." "I'm here. I'm right here." The voice was close now, maybe 20 feet away, but something felt wrong. I realised it before Katie said anything. The voice sounded exactly like Josh. Not similar, exactly like Josh. Same pitch, same accent, same inflection. "Katie, stop," I said quietly. She froze. "What?" "That voice. Listen to it." "Help! I can't see you. Where are you?" Katie's face went pale. She heard it too. "Josh," she whispered, turning around. "Say something." "What do you want me to say?" Josh asked from behind. The voice in the fog called out again. "What do you want me to say?" Same words, same tone. Josh's voice, coming from the fog ahead of us. We stood there, frozen. The voice kept calling. "I'm here. Can you see me? Please, I need help. Why did you stop?" Each phrase was something one of us had said in the last few minutes. He was mimicking us, repeating our words back in our own voices. "Back to the trail," Katie said quietly. "Now." We turned around and started walking, fast. The fog was so thick I couldn't see the trail anymore. Everything looked the same. Grey trees, grey ground, grey air. "Hello? Where did you go?" The voice was following us, still sounding like Josh, but now it was ahead of us again. How had it gotten in front of us? Katie pulled out her whistle, the emergency whistle we all carried, and she blew it 3 times. The sound cut through the fog, sharp and loud. "I can see you now." The voice was directly ahead, maybe 10 feet away. I still couldn't see anything but fog. Katie grabbed my arm. "Run! Just run!" We crashed through the underbrush, trying to find the trail. Branches whipped my face. I tripped over root, caught myself, but I kept moving. Behind us, the voice called out, "Run! Just run!" Katie's exact words, her exact voice. I don't know how long we ran for. Maybe 5 minutes, maybe 15. Time felt weird in that fog. Finally, Katie stopped and held up her GPS. "Found it. The trail's right there." We scrambled back onto the trail and kept moving, fast hiking, almost jogging. The fog stayed thick, but as long as we could see white blazes, we knew we were going in the right direction. We didn't hear the voice again. An hour later, the fog started to lift. By noon, it was completely gone, just vanished like it had never been there. We could see the trail ahead, the mountains, the sky. We stopped at the next shelter to catch our breath and eat lunch. 4 other hikers were there, 2 couples who stayed at the shelter the night before instead of hiking through the fog. "You guys look rattled," one of them said, a woman in her 40s with a trail name of Compass. Katie told them what happened, the voice, the mimicking, how it followed us. The other hikers exchanged glances. "Did this happen near the old logging road?" the Compass asked. "About 3 miles back." "I don't know," Katie said. "We couldn't see anything." Compass pulled out her phone and showed us a trail app. "There's a logging road that crosses the AT around there. Back in 2009, a hiker named Michael Grayson, he disappeared in that exact area. He was hiking alone, and the last anyone heard from him, he called his wife saying he was lost in the fog and he thought he heard someone calling for help." My stomach dropped. What happened to him? They never found him. Search and rescue looked for 2 weeks. His wife said she could hear someone in the background of the call, someone calling out, but it wasn't a normal voice. She said it sounded wrong, like it was imitating her husband. They figured he got disorientated in the fog, Compass continued. Chased what he thought was someone calling for help and ended up completely lost. Probably fell, got hypothermia, but they never found his body, never found any trace of him. Josh went pale. "That voice we heard, it knew exactly what we were saying. It repeated our words back to us." "Did you see anyone?" Compass asked. "No," I said, "just heard the voice." We reported it to the ranger at the next road crossing. He took note, but I could tell he was skeptical, probably thought we'd spooked ourselves in the fog, heard echoes of another hiker we just couldn't see. But I know what we heard. That voice wasn't human, or if it was human, it was someone who learned to mimic voices perfectly, and they were out there in that fog, calling for help, waiting for hikers to come looking. We stuck together for the rest of Massachusetts, never split up, never stepped off the trail. Every time fog rolled in, would stop hiking and just wait at the nearest shelter until it cleared. I finished my through hike in September, all 2,193 miles, but I still think about that voice sometimes, about Michael Grayson, who went looking for someone calling for help and just never came back. And I wonder if he's still out there, lost in the fog, calling for help in someone else's voice, waiting for that next hiker who'll step off the trail to find him.